allegiance to the flag of the United States
United
of
States
America
of America,
and to the republic
the
for
republic
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is that Commissioner Gibbon?
Correct.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Sean, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Aaron's, Commissioner Gibbon,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Landine.
Yes. We'll go ahead and move on to our opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board? Go ahead, come on up, just state your name and address.
Morning. My name is Tim Dundolk, 46785 290th Street, Beersford, South Dakota.
Go ahead.
All right. I came this morning just to voice my concern with the odor model and how it restricts dairy expansion in Lincoln County. I own and operate Dakota Plains Dairy in southwest Lincoln County, and I just wanted to go over the financial and economic impact it has on the county for our business today and how we would like to expand it. So currently we milk about 12,000 cows and we employ 66 people, and the average benefits of the employees is $78,389. Average milk production is 800,000 pounds a day. And just in local repairs to like Ace Hardware, the welding shop, yearly is about 1.5 million. And we have spent over 70 million in Lincoln County. And for example, on the impact it has on the grain industry in the area, every 10,000 milking cows impacts about 30,000 acres between soybean meal, distillers, corn silage, ground corn, and other commodities. And just with the odor model today, it prevents us from expanding, and we would like to expand and spend more money in Lincoln County. And previously we built 6 years ago we started, and the setback was 3/4 of a mile. And that was already, compared to other states we've been in, kind of restrictive, but we worked around it, and we're very happy in Lincoln County. But if we could go back to the way it was, or have some leeway where we can get around an odor model, because in the dairy industry today, if you don't build if you can't get over 5,000-6,000 head, it just, economies of scale bring us down competitively, and we would have to look in another county to expand. So if we can get above that and still be at the 3/4, we're fine with that, but it just restricts dairy expansion in Lincoln County in the future, and it also restricts the possibility of cheese plants or processing coming to the area. So if there is less milk here. So,
Thank you. Your comments are well noted.
all right.
So what did you say your name was?
Tim Dendulk, Dendulk.
Thank you.
And then with Dakota Plains Dairy.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Schmidt.
I would like to put that on his concerns on next week's agenda, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I was just a question for Toby. Toby, weren't we looking at, is that still tabled? Did
That was
we,
denied, so it have to be brought back up.
so it was denied, so that, because we had an option to take that odor plan off of there, but we didn't, did we?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it being put back on the agenda for discussion. So we'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have public comment? If not, we will go ahead and move on to our regular business with the first reading.
Do we have no commissioner reports?
Oh, well, I'm just skipping all you guys. Are there any commissioner reports? Commissioner Schmidt, do you have any report?
No, I do not.
Commissioner Gibbon?
No, I do not.
Okay, how about you, Commissioner Aaron's? All right, there aren't any, and I don't have one. So then we'll move on to regular business with the first reading.
This is the first reading for an ordinance of Lincoln County, South Dakota, rezoning the property legally described as the north half and northeast quarter, except along Track 1 and the meadow at Spring Creek, Section 27, Township 100 North, Right 49 West, from the A1 Agricultural District to the RR Rural Residential District, and amending the official zoning map of Lincoln County. Location is parcel ID 100 4927 1010.
Good morning. As was just mentioned, this is an application from John Schwartzley to change his zone of approximately 43 acres from the A1 Agricultural District to the RR Rural Residential District. Mr. Schwartzley did submit a preliminary plan in conjunction with this application, which you also will hear at the August 3rd meeting. That application is showing a subdivision of approximately 29 lots for future single-family residential development on the property. This property is approximately 3 miles to the northeast of the city of Harrisburg, just across the street from where the joint jurisdictional boundary exists with the city of Sioux Falls. This area is within the city of Harrisburg's growth area, but it's not identified because of equidistant territory as their subdivision authority. As I mentioned, Mr. Schwartzley did submit a preliminary plan with the application. There are some changes, though, that are being requested for the preliminary plan. First and foremost is that the highway superintendent has determined that there is not an availability for 2 accesses onto the property, so they're going to restrict it to 1 access, so this will have to be redrawn for that. As well as some additional concerns with drainage on the property. There is an existing subdivision to the east of this property. It's become our knowledge within the last few weeks that this subdivision has developed or placed a drain tile from their property along the county right-of-way down to the creek or I should say north of this property here. And so there is some concerns is one, that would be a non-conforming drain tile in the county right-of-way, as well as what impacts this proposal would have on that. Staff did recommend denial of this application. According to the comprehensive plan, this is a future agricultural area, and again, it's outside of a growth area. It's outside of a subdivision authority of a municipality, so it doesn't meet those criteria for approval. However, the adjacent properties are like zoning, and the proposed use would be appropriate for this area. But because of that, staff did recommend denial of this application. And as mentioned just previously, the Planning Commission did also recommend denial of this application. Unanimously. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time. This is, again, the first reading of this application. The second reading and public hearing along with the preliminary plan will be at your August 3rd meeting.
Toby, is there any other investigation going on of that non-conforming drain tile?
Not that I'm completely aware of. We did make legal counsel aware of it, and we have Terry and I are in communication to determine if there was any permits or anything authorized for it. No.
That was one of the differences.
Yes. So by August 3rd, though, staff will have kind of an understanding and kind of a better picture of what that entails.
Thank you. That was my question too, was what was going on with that drain tile. All right. Anybody else have any questions for staff? If not, we'll move on to our 2022 budget work session. Thank you, Toby.
So last time we met, we went through a lot of the budgets, with the exception of the sheriff and the building. So we'll start with the sheriff's budget. And Steve is here to present on that.
Sherry, before you guys go any further, could whoever's on the telephone mute their, I don't know about you, but that just bugs the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And I think people listening at home may, thank you.
I would agree. That's much better.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning. Okay, Steve Swenson, Lincoln County Sheriff. I wasn't here last time, so I'm not 100% sure how you want me to do this.
Well, just run us through your numbers. I
All right.
guess.
Let's see more here. Okay, I don't have anything in the wages. The auditor's office is working on that, so that's new this year. But
Sure.
insurance, I was gonna go through kind of what these all cover, so you guys know. I knew I should put this in the computer. Okay, the insurance number, that's kind of a stagnant number. It goes up a little bit every year. We have added some cars, the MRAP, so some of the increase from 19 to 20 you show there, but should stay relatively the same. So at 27.5. Fees and contracts, that number's a little fluid because I don't think we're gonna do it now this year. We were going to have IT take over all computer programming, which would include our CAD system. So it's in my budget for the X-ray machine out front, Central Square, which is the CAD system, live scan fingerprint machine, metal detector, animal control contract, taser contracts, the South Dakota Sheriff's Association membership, and Zerker Consulting, that's again our CAD system. So that's where that $40,000 is being spent. Repairs and maintenance, that is our vehicle repairs. That number is starting to kind of come down now that we've gotten some better vehicles or lower mile vehicles. Last 12 months, we are running at actually for this year, we're at $16,572 in repairs. Last year, the total was, I believe, 42,000. So we're at about a 15 or 16% reduction in that if we maintain. Now, a wrecked car, that could change all that, but that's where that number's at. That's what that number covers. Fuel, kind of a guessing game with the prices doing what they're doing. Last year, we were able to get most of our fuel at gas stations, so our number's down a little bit. Due to COVID, we were saving about 15 to 20 cents a gallon purchasing fuel from gas stations. That's changed. We're back at the county shop because now the gas station prices are higher than the county price. Supplies and materials, I haven't got this number figured out yet, to be honest with you. I keep missing it drastically, and a lot of that is because of the new deputies we're adding to uniform them and outfit them is about $6,000 a deputy. I'm happy to report that we are fully staffed as of next Monday. Our final deputy will be starting. So we will be fully staffed, so that number should level out. So I'm hoping that comes down to the 55,000 mark. Traveling conference, that's been covering our training. So these numbers are actually been changed since this is traveling conference. I believe I have at $6,000 and training at $20,000, and that before was combined. The auditor asked that we break that up a little bit so it's more, gives a better picture of what we're doing.
Steve, do you have officers that need to be certified yet?
We will, Deputy Zongo will be attending the academy in Sioux Falls starting in August. That's no charge to the county other than we pay the wage. And then we have a kid from South Carolina that will be starting next Monday. And with any luck, his route would be passing the South Dakota reciprocity, so he wouldn't have to go to the academy.
Okay.
Was he, how successful was the $5,000 bonus for previously certified?
Very. Yeah.
Yeah.
We picked up a kid from the Pennington County Sheriff's Office who started yesterday. I think it was a great pickup, but that's the incentive to get these, because the pay is about the same, insurance is about the same, but you know, his was about location, and that 5,000 helps them move and keeps us from sending them to the academy for 3 months, and it's a win-win, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, it's been huge. Like I say, this is the first time we've been fully staffed since I arrived, so. It was a good deal. Utilities, that numbers is gone up double from last year, not quite double, but that's because we're paying our AT&T Connect to our computers and the AT&T cell phone bills out of that now. We weren't doing that before. We didn't have cell phones before. So that's why that number went up. But on the flip side of that, we're not paying a stipend for cell phones anymore. Prisoner care, my favorite one. So those numbers dropped during COVID to probably 25, 30%. And then for whatever reason, they've shot way up. So I was budgeting at the 2.1 million was for 57 inmates, I believe. We have been averaging 55 to 59 this year. And it's on track for July to be the same. So with any uptick, and if we use the calls for service scale, they're up 20, 25% this year. So if that jail number tracks that, I think we're gonna probably be looking at 65 inmates as an average for next year, which is why I asked the auditor to bump that number up to 2.5 million.
Steve, is your calls for service up when you say up 25%? Is that over COVID or is that over what your baseline?
Some of it,
Before COVID?
some of it is, no, it's, and I printed off about 8,000 sheets here. So in 2018, I'm just gonna give you the total, and I can email you guys these too, but 2018, we had 7,905 total calls for service. Last year, we had 11,000, correction, 2019, we had 11,696 calls for service. Last year, 13,119. And this year, we're at 8,670. So COVID doesn't appear to affect our calls for service. It did affect our jail population because they were letting people out for more serious crime because of COVID than they are now. But it's just, it's busy. It's really gotten busy, and part of it is we've added deputies too. So you take that into consideration. But it's busy out there.
They're discovering more.
Right.
If you had a smaller force, they wouldn't see as much.
Yep. We can be a little bit more proactive than reactive. I can tell you that the big thing that's changed is our burglaries. We were having 6 to 7 of a week in 2019, 2020. And with the extra manpower, we've been able to sit in some of those locations and we've got them down to 1 or 2 a week. So that's pretty significant, because those were very time consuming. So things are just, it's busy. A lot of out-of-state people moving here and keeping us going. All right. Now, the prisoner medical cost is a guessing game. With the way it was going this year, I thought we were gonna be over budgeted for medical because we were just running quite a bit lower. As soon as I did the budget, we had a gentleman spend 5 days in the hospital that was an inmate, and now we have an inmate with stage 4 cancer. So I'm guessing this 90,000 that I anticipated for this year is not gonna cover that now. However, do we have those scenarios next year? Will the 73,000 cover it? It's just a guessing game. Fuel for transports stays the same as last year at $10,000. Electronic monitoring's pretty fixed because we know the number of, that's for rental of the ankle monitors monthly, and that stays pretty consistent.
That's pretty much passed through to the defendant, right?
Right. Yeah, there's revenue. I think it's a little over $100,000 a year that program generates. Computer software, change that to 0. I don't see anything that we need that IT won't supply. Motor vehicles, you see there's a pretty good increase from last year to this year. We currently have 25 patrol vehicles, 1 UTV, and 1 MRAP in our inventory. We have 1, 2, our school resource officer has 132,000 miles on his vehicle. One of our detectives is driving a vehicle with 142,000. Let's see. We have 3 vehicles in patrol, 4, 5 vehicles, scratch it, 3 vehicles in patrol with, one has 109, one 124, and 125. And then we have 1 in the jail division with 160. So a total of 7 vehicles with over 100,000 miles on them. They become a maintenance nightmare. They're really not safe for patrol when they get up that high. And that 125,000 miles, probably the sweet spot for a patrol car. The jail division just depends on the car. This one with 160,000, the maintenance hasn't been bad on it, but it's not a car we can send to California to pick up an inmate. We got to shuffle cars around. So it's my recommendation that we sorry, I can't see anymore. And then the other part of that is we have a 19.2, which is year 19, 2019 car. Those cars that were bought in 19 have 76, 96, 72,000 miles on it. So next year, they'll be up over 100,000. So if we don't continue this pace, we're gonna fall behind, which we are behind. So it's my recommendation that we replace 6 cars for next year. We'll be able to keep a couple of these cars that are not in terrible shape, that they'll work in the jail division for another year, get us by for another year.
Steve, what do we do in order to avoid in the future? Because it seems like a perfect storm right now. You know, you get hit, you got all these vehicles with all the mileage. What do we do in order to create some kind of rotation where you're feathering in or, you know, rotating in new vehicles or purchasing? You don't have to purchase a bulk of your fleet every 6 years.
So I ran a mileage report. We're putting on about 330,000 miles a year, department-wide. So if we can get caught up and get on a rotation of 3 to 4 cars a year, if you use that 100,000 mark as kind of your replacement goal, then by the time they get here and get built, and there's another 10,000 miles. But if you use that, or even the 125,000 mark, if we can get caught up and just kind of monitor our annual mileage, okay, if we get up to 400,000, then it'll be 4 a year, but then it should level out.
Right.
That's kind of my goal. I thought I was getting there with a 4 at a time, but it's, the first cars I bought are now at 100,000 miles, which is crazy.
And then, because we added deputies and we're at 100% now, or we'll be here in a week, is that also why we had to buy more vehicles too, or
Right.
not?
We needed to add 2. We added 7 deputies,
Okay,
which translated into 2 cars.
okay,
And they share a car, so if I work day shift, my 4 days, I have a car.
they hot seat them.
Yep, and then at the end of that 4 days, he switches with the next guy that goes to his shift, so, and it works really well. So,
When you say 7 deputies, does that mean within the last 12 months?
no, 7 deputies in the last 3 years.
Okay.
And I brought that, and I requested another deputy for next year. Based on the population and policing models, you're supposed to have a deputy per 1,000 people. Lincoln County adds 3,000 people a year. A lot of those are in the northern part that are policed by other police as well. So I think if I think we're in a really good spot now, and if we maintain that, kind of the same as the car thing, if we add 1 a year versus falling way behind and needing 3 and 4, I think this would be a good amount. If we're adding 3,000 people a year, take 50% of those are gonna belong to us, and add a police officer a year, and that would fit that policing.
Did you say a deputy for every 3,000 people?
No, 1,000 is what the FBI recommends. I do believe 1,500 is a safe number in rural South Dakota, so to speak. So, because we're in a really good spot now, I just don't want to fall behind again. And Lincoln County right now has 2 deputies working at all times, which has never happened before.
Which is good for safety.
Huge.
Steve, the 6 vehicles that you are looking to purchase, what kind are they? Are they all going to be SUVs?
Yeah, so unfortunately, the Ford or the Dodge Durango, scratch that, Dodge Charger no longer makes the Hemi all-wheel drive car. So you can only get the Hemi in just a rear-wheel car, not ideal for South Dakota. So we've moved to the Ford Explorer, but the Ford Explorer, the Dodge Durango, the Ford pickups, Tahoe, they're all pretty much the same price, and they're so much better for what we do as deputies. You know, the Chargers are high maintenance, they're really fast, but they're not built for county roads and gravel roads and section lines, and so I think that's another reason our maintenance prices has gone down, because we're not replacing radiators and
Well, I think,
grills.
when you look at the Sioux Falls Police Department and you look other, SUVs seem to be the rule of the day. Yeah.
Right, well, they're the same price, get about the same gas mileage, their maintenance has been better. So, and we've tried, since I've been here, we've tried the Durango, been great, but it's a little slow. The Ford pickups have been outstanding, and now these Ford Explorers. So we can keep in that rotation, that way the equipment switches from one vehicle to the next,
So to Commissioner Aaron's point, which is well made, we look at 6 this year and then possibly 4 subsequently every year thereafter. Is that kind of the program?
That is the way it looks to me. We're putting 330,000 miles on. Now keep in mind, if we wreck a car,
Yeah.
you know, we had a car deer accident not too long ago. The car was savable, but say it was right on the bubble where they could have totaled that car. Then that can put us behind, but knock on wood, we've had 2 really good years of gals are taking good care of the equipment.
And these are all off state bids, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Steve, one of the comments I hear out in the public, and I think some folks don't understand, so I want to give you an opportunity to explain this. One of the criticisms I hear with the model of one deputy for every 1,000 people is most of that growth is occurring in Sioux Falls, and the Sioux Falls PD patrols all curb and gutter in Sioux Falls. Can you kind of help the public understand how an increase in population affects crime overall, even though the Sioux Falls Police Department may be patrolling the area where all the growth is occurring?
So that was, and I did not bring that paperwork up here. That's why I'm saying when Sioux Falls or Lincoln County is growing by 3,000 people a year, 1,500, I'm saying half of those are probably in that jurisdiction. Some of them are over in the T area, which is also policed by their own police department. However, anybody that moves into the county that we are required to do civil service on, it increases our workload. Our civil service, we serve $3,000, 2,924 in 2020, and we're at 1,757, so about the same pace for this year. But that's, the year before was 2,200, so it's going up. Bad math here, 10-15% a year right now, and so that drives our calls for sure. That it takes a deputy to go serve those papers, but you know, if you move to T and you wreck at Louise Avenue and 271st, that's us. If you go to Baker's Crossing, that's us. If you go to Spring Creek, that's us. So there's those people are still moving about the county, and anything that happens, or they drift out of Sioux Falls to do the burglaries and the meth deals, that crowd, that big population right at our border drives crime, because they move out in the county to do their, either north or south to do their crime.
And you got an interstate where a lot of drugs move up and down I-29.
Right.
There's crime that goes with that.
You know, that's an excellent point. That interstate brings a lot of work. It's, you know, they're getting off at the truck stops, they're getting off at the exits, and I think that was a lot of our burglary issues. But go down on I-29, it's a busy road, and you know, I don't have the calls for service at that interstate, but we take nearly all accidents on that interstate. So it's just more and more people are moving around.
Steve, I'm sure you and your organization and the sheriffs across the state have looked at this pending marijuana thing. You've got medical, which probably is not going to be the situation, because it's kind of a precursor to if recreational comes in. Do you have any thoughts at this time on how that will affect you on this thing? It might get more difficult because
well, some of it is you know, it's to be political about it. The people voted for it, so we'll deal with it. On the flip side of that, if we're gonna have grow operations and dispensaries here that aren't gonna be allowed in other counties, that will again drive customers out of Sioux Falls to our locations, which will become the responsibility of the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. These will also be out in the rural areas, which I don't know what the burglary rate or the crime rate that those facilities will bring, but I imagine it will tax us in some way. Whether what kind of security they have, that kind of stuff is all will be learned, but I've yet to see a drug make society a better place.
well, I think we're gonna have a lot of social expenses that we don't anticipate, but You know, when you start talking about, we're not gonna get off on the weeds on that, but I just think it's gonna make your job much more difficult.
I'm sure there'll be some challenges to it.
Anybody else? All right. If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
What do we got next, Sherry?
Is John on the phone, Jake? John's off-site right now. John's off-site right now, so we're trying to get him on the phone to
Okay.
go over his budget.
I think it's right. Is this right?
John Rombo or John Peters?
Rombo?
John
Rombo.
Rombo.
What page is that on?
Yeah, what page is that?
He would be under the general government building. The 461.
Yep.
4161. He's on the phone. Go ahead, John.
Good morning, John.
Good morning. Can
You-
everybody hear me okay?
I can. We're just trying to find you in our.
I haven't found it yet. Have you found it? I haven't either. Oh, too far? I have the sheriff's. I didn't know it was before the sheriff's.
It was before.
Okay. Thank you.
And then he's got the egg buildings that will be further back.
All right. Go ahead, John.
So, it sounded like I just had an echo there.
We can hear you fine.
Okay. So, much like Steve said, obviously all the personnel stuff is all dealt with through the auditor this year. So I will just jump right into insurance. I basically left that the same as last year, or that this current year at $45,000. My professional fees is like all the inspections that we're mandated to do, like for the elevator and fire suppression and all that, and also our contract with GNR on the HVAC system. And I left that the same this year because that was pretty much locked in. My repairs and maintenance, I also left the same as this year at $45,000. Supplies and materials, I did increase because I saw a shortfall, so I upped it to $45,000 now. I did lower that this year because I didn't think I'd have the kind of COVID expense I had last year, but it seems like I'm going to be high again, so I did need that to catch that shortfall. Travel and conference, I left the same as this year. Utilities, I also left the same as this year. So that brings us to buildings and structures. So I know I was probably reaching, but I put down demolishing the old jail again on this year's budget request. I had $130,000 now. I have talked to at least one company that would do it for far less than that. Of course, hard to say until the job's bid. But I just wanted to keep that on your guys' radar so we know that it's got to get done. But I also know what else is going on in the realm of the courts building and everything. So I guess that's why I didn't include it as a parking lot this time. I just was thinking the jail's got to come down at some point. We should do it this year. The updating the mechanical engineering plans. As you know, we've done quite a few different electrical upgrades in the 4 years I've been here, and our plans that currently are on file are kind of getting out of date. So this would allow us to basically have another set of plans that would be accurate, and that's about $6,000. $15,000 for the stairwell painting project. When I look at the building as a whole, our stairwells are getting pretty ugly as far as chip painting and all this. So I want to start tackling that and doing that cleanup. I have carpet and painting in the sheriff's office for $45,000. Now, I'm more than willing to take this off because obviously if the courts building happens, the sheriff's office goes with it. But just understand that as we come with a final fix for admin, then I would like to have that tackled while their building's empty then. So, that'll be up for future discussion, I guess. My next thing on the list is the bat guano removal and installation replacement. I would like to see this happen this year yet, but I wasn't sure it was doable. It's not in my budget for this year, and I'm not sure where I'm going to land with monies. But I am getting pricing right now for that. Just started that process again. But just know that there's a chance that I might be approaching you guys in the next month to see if we can just push forward to get that done in 2021's budget. So the heating addition in off-site storage building, that's the building that we had a discussion with last week as far as the old weed shop that's to the south, 3 blocks. We have heating units that came out of the wash bays at the highway shop, and I was going to put them to use by adding them to that, so evidence storage and our storage would have heat in there, and we could utilize it better in the winter months. We also we kind of need a place just to get our snow equipment in to have it thaw off, much like how Terry does. So it would be really nice to be able to get that stuff under some kind of heat. I wouldn't probably run it real warm, but 40s, maybe 50. That's the $8,000. The next item is demolishing that abated property by the airport, and as Bill has said, that's off the plate right now. So that can be struck off my budget request. That brings us to my next line item, which is improvements other than. I went ahead and added the $25,000 in the budget for the new Veterans Memorial. I was contacted by Dave earlier this week, and I know there's more momentum about moving Canton's Memorial back up front again. And they're doing the fundraising again. But obviously, if that money happens, then I don't know how it would have to get transferred into my budget and paid for out of county money, I guess. That would be a Sherry thing. Next item is crack sealing and relining the existing parking lot behind Sturdivant's. That's definitely a need. It's probably something I should have tried to accomplish this year. Next thing is evidence storage system for the sheriff's office of $60,000. Once again, with the assumption that we might be moving forward with another solution for the sheriff's office, that could be struck off my budget. But if that falls apart, we're probably going to be definitely needing to make that happen in 2023's budget. The next item is around that off storage building. Because of the sensitive nature of some of the stuff that's stored in that building, it would be proper to have it under 2 sets of locks, typically with a fenced-in lock system and then the lock on the door. But some of that would be resolved potentially with the new courts facility with the sheriff's department moving out there. So I suppose that could be struck, but it would be have to just keep in mind that again, if that project does not happen, we would definitely be needing to probably push that through very quickly in 2023's budget. So then that takes me to furniture and minor equipment. I put $60,000 in there, and much of that would be for a new pickup to replace the old pickup that came from the transfer station that we use for snow removal. That, as you know, it originally was emergency management's pickup, and then it was transferred to the transfer station. And it's said with about 200,000 miles on it, and has really become a maintenance headache to me this summer. So that pickup needs to go away for sure. The $60,000 would cover the price of the pickup and hopefully the new plow, and it would also leave me money, to handle any other minor equipment need I would need, which I always have some money in my budget for anyway. So that's the general government buildings part of the budget. Do you guys have any questions about that part?
I do, John. Do you need a new plow for the replacement pickup?
Maybe, maybe not. I didn't want to say no. Right now, so I'm thinking I would probably put the plow that's on the red pickup onto the pickup I got from the highway department this year. I think that pickup would handle that size plow no problem. But that pickup also, just so you know, has about 140,000 miles on it. It'll probably be on the list to get replaced, within the next couple of years anyway. But I have to have 2 plow pickups. It's all just to handle what we do. I got to have at least 2 plow pickups. So that's why I didn't want to eliminate the opportunity to make that call.
So do you have 2 plows now, or you don't?
I do, yes. I got the white pickup that I bought in 19.
And then, what does a new plow run? Do you have any idea?
About $5,000.
Didn't we buy one last year?
Well, that's what I was thinking, and then I'm just looking at that number of 60,000. It seems like we were buying pickups a lot cheaper than that.
Well, I talked to Jared and Terry, and they're saying, off-state bid. I think they got their last ones for about $34, $35.
That's what I thought.
Of course, now pricing has gone up considerably with the market the way it is. I don't really know where that'll land. And then, like I said, I typically would have $10,000 to $20,000 just for other equipment needs. I'm hoping that I should be able to limp through a year if I had to cut that number. But I hate to shoot myself in the foot since I typically do spend money on other equipment needs each year.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for John? If not, thank you.
No, we would
What?
need to move on to the egg building with them.
Oh, all right, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're
This
fine.
won't be quite as long. So, as we're moving to egg buildings, insurance, I haven't spent anything on insurance in the past, so I kept that number at 0. fees and contracts, I anticipate as we move into the building of all these ag buildings, I'm going to need more assistance with IMAG out there, resurveying and moving stakes and whatnot. So I put $10,000 in for that. Rentals, I left the same. Repairs and maintenance, I also left the same. Supplies and materials, I also left the same. Utilities, the same. Land is the same. That's basically the payment for the building. Building and structures, typically the number I had in that was the $360, and that's part of that purchase, and I don't remember exactly why that number exists. Maybe interest or something, I don't remember. But I added $30,000 to that originally because I wanted to possibly build a pole barn to put additional materials over there and also equipment that we're bringing over from the transfer station. That said, after talking to Terry, the number for the new, if we move forward, which I really hope that we will with at least the show ring, that should be listed in my budget, and I think that's $150,000 what we put in for that. So that's why that number is elevated to $180,360. You know, we could fall short on all that if we get the funding to move forward with all the buildings, but I guess we'll deal with that next year if that happens. Then improvement other than, I have $80,000 listed because I'm being told that's what utilities will cost for running the water and all that stuff out there, and you know, and that would include one septic system for that restroom over there and everything on the far side of the ag buildings. I can't remember honestly right now if that included septic upgrades to the main building that exists now. We've been bouncing back and forth whether we were just going to put two tanks in there or if we would do a full-fledged septic system. And then finally, furniture, minor equipment, I left it the same.
Does anybody have any questions?
John, when you talk about the water and you talk about septics, isn't that something that we could use some of that rescue funds for? Because those are a couple of areas that the Treasury Department has allowed for sewer and water. So if we're putting in for water and we're going to upgrade our septics, maybe that could be covered. And the other part, John, I think what we should look at in the long range would be that we're about 3/4 of a mile from, I think, the sewer line that runs in Lennox. We should explore possibly putting sewer out there as well, because we have the funds for it for a one-time deal. But I'd like to have that explored anyway, because I think that would really upgrade your whole facility.
So, question for Sherry. So with the COVID money, I mean, that's not going into a general fund, that's kept separately, correct? So do these things that money could pay for, do they need to be in the budget?
They would, we would probably want them under the ARPA fund, but at this point, we could, since we don't know what we're gonna do, technically, we could just say those are gonna be reimbursed from the ARPA fund.
Okay,
Type of thing.
thank you.
I don't have any budget set up for that right now, cause
No, I
We
understand.
don't know.
gun shy.
All right, thank you.
So yeah, to answer your question, I obviously don't really have the answers, but yes, that would be ideal if we could make that money work for that.
Anything else for us today, Jen?
I'm good. If you're good,
Yep, I think so. Thank you.
you bet. Thank you.
All right, so now we've gone through everybody's expenditure budget. I don't know if you guys have had any time to think about any areas that you maybe wanna revisit, or I've given you that sheet that shows the summary of fund differences. So you can see where we've made the changes, where we're sitting as far as budgets. If you look overall, most of them are going down with the exception of IT and HR, which we know what those are. And state's attorney, which we know what he's got going on. Is there anything that you wanna look at closer? You want me to dig into a little bit more? I did get, other economic development from, Children's Inn, I think it was, and they are requesting 12,000. So as far as how we wanna divvy out that money, if you'll, on this summary of fund changes, you'll see that under other economic development, it increased by 58.28%. The reason that is because we put the Forward Sioux Falls, the Compass, the Coatabilities and Lifescapes. I put those all under there because they basically are their economic assistance for those places. So that's why we've got such a large increase on that one.
Where's this at, Sherry?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
which one is that?
The other economic development is under the general fund, but if you look at this sheet here, it's probably clearer or a little cleaner.
58% increase.
Which
The
one is that?
other economic fund went from 34,000 to 81,500. And that's because we talked about moving forward Sioux Falls from the commissioner's budget to this, and then I've also moved to Coatabilities, which was under mental illness.
Nope.
And, did you find it? And then I've got Lifescapes moved under there because that was also under mental illness, and I think it's better served under other economic development.
Now, how much is this Forward Sioux Falls?
I think we said
is
that
that
there's gonna
about?
be a $4,000 contribution over the next 5 years?
7 years,
7 years.
probably.
4,000 over 7 years?
Yep. And that's, I think, actually less than
That's
what we
less than
gave
what
them
we-
last year.
Yes.
And isn't this the one where Minnehaha County gives them 2,000 a year?
So it's 28,000 then, over 7 years?
Yes.
So we're giving them more than what they asked for?
No.
How much did they ask for?
They haven't, they didn't submit anything yet, right, Jim?
Yeah,
They-
they're gonna come out with $25,000, which was less than what we've given in the past. I think we've given as much as $50,000. And I don't know, Commissioner Aaron's, I think Minnehaha County has upped their ante. I don't know. I have no knowledge of that.
Yeah, they're doing 2,000 as of, on the 2020 request, they did 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah, they did 2,000. We've never given them 50,000.
Yes, yeah, we did the first year. When they first came out, we gave them $50,000 the first year. That's several years ago. That's probably, could be 14 years ago when they first come out. But we've whittled that down, I think, every year that's gone down considerably.
Do they do any projects here in Lincoln County?
Jim?
Because their website says they're not doing any projects cited in Lincoln County.
Well, Commissioner, I'll have probably the chair from Dave Rosenboom come down from the bank and give you the spiel from Forward Sioux Falls. It's not necessarily what they do right for Lincoln County, but when you add the number of jobs that have been created overall in our area, most of the people that leave from Harrisburg or T or Lenox go to Sioux Falls because of the growth up there. So we may not have a specific project that is built in Lincoln County, but yet the residents do benefit by higher wages and job opportunities that may not have existed without the economic development program. And this one, Forward Sioux Falls, is recognized nationally as one of the most successful programs in the country, and I don't know how many have copied that throughout South Dakota and throughout the region. So I don't know that we can look at specifically saying, are they south of 57th Street? It's an area development that not only Lincoln County has benefited from, but Turner and Moody and Union and anybody that works up in the Sioux Falls area.
Now, we belong to the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce too, don't we? Because I noticed on the Forward Sioux Falls website, the Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce is a donor to Forward Sioux Falls. So I'm kind of wondering why we belong to all these organizations and then they give money to each other. Shouldn't we just belong to one organization up there instead of belonging to multiple ones?
Well, Commissioner, I don't mean to take exception, but the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce is one that many people or organizations, over 2,000, belong to. And I don't know that they look at it from that particular standpoint. The Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce receives money from from Forward Sioux Falls for various projects, for the lobbying, for example, that Sioux Falls does for the business community in our entire area is paid for by Forward Sioux Falls. And our dues to the chamber are, I don't know, are $400 a year, which is not onerous to belong to a organization that really is a betterment for all of us. So I don't know, we could belong to the Chamber of Commerce from Harrisburg or Chamber of Commerce from T or Lennox or anybody. But I think that's the county's position to promote these kinds of things. So I don't know that they give money back and forth. Like I tried to explain to you, Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce is a dues organization. It runs on its membership's dues, but any of its other programs need financial assistance, and that's the purpose of Forward Sioux Falls, to try to contribute to that.
I'm just worried 4,000 seems pretty expensive. We just raised taxes on people, and I think for $28,000 of taxpayer money to this organization just seems a little too steep for me.
Would you entertain the fact if I brought the chairman of the Forward Sioux Falls down and explained the program to it? They've had wonderful success this year from businesses throughout the area, but to accommodate just for the purpose of showing what they have done, I would like to have Dave Rosenboom come down and give you a brief synopsis of that, if that would be okay.
Yeah, I'm always open to hearing from these folks, and I'm sure he's going to talk about all the great things they're doing and all facts, figures, and statistics. One thing I'm worried about, though, is since, we're not a business, we're government, and so you can't look at giving money to these organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and to Forward Sioux Falls the same way you would as if you were Raven or Citibank. And one of the things I am concerned about is if we're going to give this much money to Forward Sioux Falls, we need to see them investing in projects that are physically sited in Lincoln County. Because right now they're not doing anything that's physically sited. Now, I understand the mobility of workers, people from Lincoln County benefit from jobs in Minnehaha County. I understand that argument, and that's all good and well. But if we're going to give $28,000 to these people, they owe it to us at least to consider some kind of effort in Lincoln County that adds to our property tax base. And because that's all we have. If we had sales tax revenue and things like that, it'd be a lot easier to stomach some of these things. But we only have property taxes. And I understand the argument where people work at a job in Minnehaha County and then they own a house in Lincoln County. I get that part. But we are a unit of government giving taxpayer money away, and we just raise taxes. So we've got to be a little more, just because they asked for 25,000, there's no metric that tells me that we should just give them what they asked you for. And we ought to dial that down. I am not opposed to being a member in Forward Sioux Falls, but just because they asked for it doesn't mean we should just bend over and give it to them. We ought to dial that back and be a little more, stingier with the taxpayer money, because so what if they asked for 25? You need to go back and tell them, nope, we'll give you just as much as what Minnehaha County gave you, or we'll give you a little less, prorated on the fact that they're not actually supporting any projects that are physically sited in Lincoln County. Although there is economic mobility, so maybe we'll give you 1,500 a year, not 4,000.
Well, just to make sure that you understand, Forward Sioux Falls is an organization made up of the Development Foundation and the Chamber of Commerce. Those are the two entities that it's strictly an economic development tool that provides economic assistance to various things. So as far as them trying to put something in, they're not the development office, they're not the new Makita, whatever, that that new organization or revamped organization is all about. They don't have that. Theirs is just to collect dollars and cents to promote economic development for the region, wherever that may be. But I will get a hold of, I'm not in favor of the 1,500, Commissioner, I will say that on the record. I believe that we benefit tremendously, and we have tremendous. Our whole growth from the whole area is not due to what we have done. It's done to the growth of Sioux Falls and this entire region. But I will make provisions for the president to come down and at least address this body and inform them from their vantage point why they're deserving of some financial assistance.
Yeah, I don't even think they come down every year to give us a report or anything, do they? Even though we give them all this money every year. And I looked at their most recent nonprofit tax filing. They got lots of money in the bank, too. They got millions of dollars. So I just think I understand what you're saying. You want to give them 4,000, and you're friends with all those people up there. But sometimes you just got to tell your friends that taxpayer money doesn't come easy, and can't just always give people what they're asking for.
I'm not set on $4,000. I'm fluid on that. I would even look at what Minnehaha County would give them, if that would match. I mean, I'm not set in stone on any of that. But I would like to make sure that we understand what Forward Sioux Falls is before we kick them to the curb, and just let them help everybody understand the value that they have made throughout the past, I don't know, my God, I think they've been around for about 20 years, and how much growth has been accomplished by that.
Thank you. We're going to move along.
Okay, so Julia is here then to talk about the wages and the new hire request forms. So we'll go through that.
Okay, sounds good. Are we looking at any particular page in our books, or do we have something separate to look at?
No, the wages are on a completely separate spreadsheet, but they are in the total budget. If you
Okay.
look at your budget forms, by the
Yep.
up in the top corner, it says 2.0, 2.5, whatever.
Sure.
In those numbers, I do not have
Where's
the
that
new
at?
hire requests in there, because they're not there yet.
So are these budget worksheets that are in here, we're not looking
These
at
are the
those?
2 point.
No, okay.
Nope.
So not looking at these.
Yeah, I would just,
Put that to the side.
yep, just look at her.
Okay.
Look at your books.
Okay, we'll look at you.
Nothing to look at, okay. All right, so we have that clear.
Jake, could you please change the screen for me, please? Thank you very much. Okay, so before you'll find all new position requests, and then this is an overview of the cost of each position, totaling roughly $358,000. for these 4 positions. This is just a brief overview of the cost analysis in regards to the 4 positions. The requests themselves are in your booklets, is my understanding, right, Sherry?
Yes.
And the thought process of why the position is needed, and that information was given by each department head. So you can get the reasoning behind the positions in the book. This is more so just in a totality, global view of what's being requested. Questions on that?
The state's attorney's position there, is that the one that we just created?
Nope, that would be,
Or is that a new one in addition to that?
that would be in addition to.
Okay. And then the planner position is, I take planner, that means planning and zoning?
Yep, you're exactly right.
Okay.
And that's why the 40% increase approximately?
No. Nope, the 40% increase is only for their expenditures, but if you look at the front of your book, there's a new position request form, nope, a little further. Under all this information.
Numbers.
They're right after the wage worksheets.
Yep.
Toward the front.
Right there's where the, so that's, I think you got one more back.
Mhm. Mhm.
Find it, Jim?
Thank you.
I haven't found nothing.
They're right after those.
Okay, thank you.
So I lied, there was something to look at.
So the planner is actually for floodplain.
Yeah, that's my understanding. So we're currently recruiting for a planner position, but this would be in addition to that position.
So this is John requesting this, or is it Toby? It looks like it's kind of a combination.
They work very closely together, those 2 departments, so I
Sure.
think it's a little bit of both, but it's my understanding that it's coming out of planning and zoning. Is that right? No?
I don't. I think it come out of floodplain.
Okay. I'm wrong.
It says floodplain management. I know we hear a lot about, the sheriff's office and the state's attorney's office, and we have a pretty good grip on why they're needing additional personnel, but I don't recall if John talked about this additional position when he presented.
Briefly touched on it, he said something about,
If you want, we can have him come down.
Well, I just don't recall all of it.
he was talking about something about data entry and it takes so long to keep the GIS system updated and didn't feel he had enough bandwidth to do the other floodplain duties. I don't think I don't think he was making a pitch at that time for the position. He was just kind of
Sure.
introducing us to it. That's all that I recall him saying.
I question the need on some of these things on the floodplain and all of the other issues that seem to be cropping up. And every time I think I see a map, the floodplain has increased. There's more blue lines through it. And I just wondered how that can continually change, or if that's just an arbitrary figure that the government put out or USDA put out.
So this would be more like a data entry type of position, or do you know?
Yeah.
It's my understanding that this person would oversee the floodplain management so that John can go back to the GIS side of things. Anything more specific than that would be a John and Toby question. I can't speak to that.
Well, you know, when you evaluate the need for a new employee, you kind of ask yourself, is there things being dropped to the wayside that are critical to the operation of our business, our entity, right? I mean, what are balls getting dropped? And it's not
I'm
a
gonna
fair
get-
question. It's not a
I'm
fair
gonna get
question
John
for
down
you.
here.
I'm just thinking out loud, that's all.
That's fair.
But I didn't, did these people flush these jobs out with you, though?
There was some conversation. It's more so I'm going to, well, are we speaking about planner or all of them?
Christmas wish list type stuff here?
Some of the positions, yes, some of the positions, no.
That's where when people come in, I want a lot of things too, but when they don't preface it with I need and explain why, I guess that's where I'm having a hard time.
Most of the time when a department head, I'm just speaking in generalities, has a request for a new position, yeah, they'll let me know ahead of time and I'll ask them questions. Here are some things to think about when making these requests. And typically it's data driven. Like, how can you prove that you need this person, right? You gotta sell the need for the position. And so I encourage them to do those things, and then it's up to them to do that. So what they've done after that, sometimes I see, sometimes I don't.
Well, right, I'm just wondering what isn't, like Commissioner Aaron said, what's not getting done that needs to be getting done?
Yeah,
And
good
if
question.
everything's getting done, we don't need a new person.
Okay. He's coming down?
I got a call into him.
Okay.
And I'm not picking on him, it's
Yeah.
just generally speaking.
Any other questions regarding the figures or the numbers while we wait for John to come down?
You've got, so like Deputy State's Attorney, that increased amount on the furniture equipment, I'm assuming that's because they've got to create a space?
Yeah, I think it's the desk and what have you.
Okay,
And that was fairly conservative after talking to Jessica, who put the numbers together.
sure.
For the deputy sheriff, we put a hiring bonus in there, knowing that we'll try to get someone who's certified, of course, but knowing that we might not get somebody who's certified, so just a little bit of a cushion. But in most cases, we've been fairly successful, like the sheriff indicated earlier, that we've been able to find some quality certified applicants.
Sure.
Yeah, and just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
and I'm not nitpicking here, but I remember what Sheriff Swenson was saying. He was talking about it costs $6,000 to outfit a deputy. And, there's a lot of equipment, and bulletproof vest, and all kinds of, gear and stuff like that. Shouldn't we be putting that under furniture, equipment, and conference at the $6,000 amount? So we get a better picture of what it looks like to hire these people? Or am I missing something there that, does that
believe
come out
that's-
of a different part of the budget?
Well, I believe some of their bulletproof vests are reimbursed through grants.
Okay.
So,
But I just recall him saying that a few minutes ago, talking about $6,000, and, that sounds, I understand where that's coming from,
Mhm.
there's a lot of gear.
yeah, I would agree that.
Gives us a better, more accurate
Sure.
picture of what it costs to hire folks.
But I'm wondering with Steve's positions, he's got $1,500 under furniture and equipment. They're not at a desk, so.
I agree.
I'm thinking that's probably a portion of what the non-grant stuff would be.
Sure. Yeah, and these are line items just for expenditures, not receipts, right? Yeah.
Was John gonna come down, or?
John's out for a family medical emergency this morning.
Okay.
You want to speak to that position?
I'd like to wait until he's here too, but I can answer some questions if you have.
If it's a position for his department, then I think he needs to be here.
Yeah, it's specifically, it's a, It's a request from the floodplain budget. So there's a separate budget that John administers for the floodplain budget. For the life of it, it's never had a full-time staff person with it. John's just assumed those roles. And so really, when we looked at the duties and things like that, we assigned it as a planner position, which is kind of a misnomer because it'd be specifically kind of a floodplain technician, floodplain administrator for that position.
Why
But
don't, why don't we get that fixed? Cause we'll,
Yeah.
you know, if we do give
Yeah.
a person and it's at $53,000 today, and then we come in and say, oh, well, their job duties are this, and it's actually 70,000. Let's apples to apples, what is it gonna be? I mean,
Sure.
I think that's what
Yep.
needs to be discussed. So I'd like to see that
'Kay.
changed.
Toby, has that really grown that much?
Oh, yes, yeah. And then you look at too is, you know, this really person would be kind of a water planner because we've adopted the new master drainage plan, which we're going now into the development of permitting process. And I've said this before at the previous meetings is that our building permits are skyrocketing, but you add probably every single one of those is gonna have to have a drainage permit associated with it as well too. We're thin upstairs. We need staff that can specifically with this thing. And the other issues too is, so you implement that part of it, the floodplain issue where, you know, the feds are updating, modernizing the floodplain map. Right, so in the next few years, we'll be adopting that. We've shown you that it's gonna have some significant changes throughout the county as far as development and areas of development. The second part of that is just the increasing demand that you've seen for property owners that they want fixes to some of their existing problems out there. We need a staff person that can coordinate some of those things, apply for grants, you know, facilitate, you know, getting some of those projects done and some of those fixes done. As well as, you know, the administration part of it. The next part of it is just the public outreach. You know, we need to get out to the public and explain some of these projects that we're going through. You know, last night was a planning commission meeting. Every single application, the question came up about drainage and about flooding and things like that. We need to do a better job of really communicating to the public of what proposed development isn't necessarily a negative towards flood, you know, flood prevention, flood drainage, but it's just part of it, and we're working on it to manage it. So
How much of this, Toby, will be affected by the drain tile? You know, everybody's putting drain tile in these days. You know, it's a dry year now, but I mean, we've had wet years. Will this be impacted by, is this position going to address some of that?
permitting of it, yes, yep. If that's what the board wishes to permit it, but, you know, this person's gonna get ground running to help with assisting with developing what that ordinance is, which, again, the county does not have a drainage ordinance now. All of the concerns we hear from the public, you need to prevent this, you need to do this, we also need to look at it from the aspect that we can't require landowners or developers to do something that we don't have an ordinance for, we can't make it up. So, as part of this is what we came out of the master drainage plan is we have to adopt drainage regulations, drainage standards. Well, that's gonna require some additional permitting, additional regulations, additional communication, additional review and things like that. It's a lot of intensive type things that we're going, and we have a lot more development. You know, I presented to Judge Rasmussen a couple weeks ago some development statistics. And when you look at what we've had just this year, we've rezoned 300 acres of land just in the unincorporated area. The cities have annexed almost 900 acres of land into the cities for development. So everyone gets excited about building permits, you know, but to us, in the planning and zoning, that's just current statistics. That's just what we're doing now. What we look at for trends is what we've got coming up. And you go back to, over the last decade, we've converted 4,000 acres from agricultural to development land. Just this year, halfway through, we've already done 1,000, let alone we're probably on pace with applications to get up to 2,000. So you look at that in just 1 year, we'd be at half of what we've done in a decade of land conversion. There's a lot of development going on, and we need to make sure that we keep ahead of it with the drainage part of it. And so this is a way to look at this position to say this is a person that's gonna coordinate that for the county, for our departments.
So really, Toby, and I know John's not here, but what we're really looking at is not just a floodplain administrator. What we're really looking at here is someone who is kind of wearing a dual hat, doing some floodplain administration, but also a regulator, regulating drainage issues related to growth and development.
Yeah, I'd say a water planner, just say a water planner, yep.
And do you think it's time that we start looking into assessing an impact fee on developers, like City of Sioux Falls does?
It certainly appears that way.
And that would help pay for the regulation of the growth that we're,
The
benefiting
impacts.
from and going through.
Yeah, the impacts of the roads. The city of Sioux Falls, I've mentioned this to some of you, is that the Kathy Kruger property, which is a minimal development for us, it's, maybe 7, 8, 9 lots. But they assessed her $60,000 in just development impact fees, and we're the ones that are gonna be, dealing with the roads and dealing with the drainage and dealing with the septic systems. So either we do impact fees to address the transportation, to address the drainage, and address some of those things, or we make the developers pay a bigger role up front in doing that, such as collection systems. The one that I had this morning, you're talking about another 29 lots into an area that already has more houses than in Worthing and Hudson and Fairview combined. At some point in time, we need to say that we need to look at this as municipality, urban type development. So yes, I think some of those things need to take place, and part of that is really that position will allow us to take a greater look at specializing in kind of drainage issues and drainage impacts.
Well, the Kathy Kruger development is, first of all, it's beautiful out there. And she's a very fortunate person, and that development that she did out there is very nice. She did a good job. And if you go out there and you look at that development, and I've had 5 people take me out there now, because that's Spring Creek. All of that is beautiful property that is highly marketable, that there is a huge marketplace for that kind of upscale 1 to 3 acre lots, and they all sit on top of the bluff, and they all drain into Spring Creek. And Spring Creek, there's a lot of people who already live along Spring Creek who don't like the idea of Spring Creek bringing more water into their backyard. And that's kind of what's going on with the long development issue there too, drainage pipes from all that. But there is huge market potential there, and it doesn't seem like we have a handle on the growth and development piece as far as it relates to drainage. So.
Thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
Thank you, Toby.
We're gonna move on to wages. Where are we doing?
Elected official wages, we haven't discussed yet. So I have gathered the comparable entities. Their current wages are for 2021 to determine market for the 2022 wages. I'll just briefly go through these and talk about a possible strategy for you to consider after we evaluate the numbers. But the position of state's attorney looks like it's slightly over market by 0.99%. The position of sheriff looks like it's under market by 3.56%. The position of auditor looks like it's under market by 18.47%. Treasurer looks like it's under market by 15.78%. Sorry, here we go. Register of Deeds looks like it's under market by 14.23%. And then commission, I'm going to pause here and go into a little bit of detail, so just so everybody's on the same page. So the initial glance at this, it looks like the commission wages are over market by 10.29%. However, there's a significant outlier for Carver County at $72,000. That's due to the fact that those commissioners are full-time. So if you remove that outlier, then it looks like the commission wage is under market by 8.23%. So last year, as it pertains to the auditor and treasurer's position, the commission was supportive of bringing them to market in a 2-year time span. Is that still how you'd like to move forward with that approach for those 2 positions?
Well, I think that's what was discussed, and that's
Okay.
what we had agreed on at the time. I I don't know if people's thoughts on that have changed, but we didn't do it all at once.
Yep. Sound fair if we just move forward with that approach?
Well, I think that's what we had already agreed to do.
Okay.
So,
And then Register of Deeds, as you know, there's a new position, or new incumbent in that position. If you wanted to take a similar approach, then we would just split up that 14.23% to bring them to market over a 2-year time frame. If you want to use the same approach in which you did with the auditor and treasurer.
Sure.
what are the thoughts of the board on that?
These are government jobs, and I don't care whether you're brand new, or you were hired as the deputy, or you came from private industry and you made $500,000. You ought to be paid a fair wage in these positions. And, you know, if you run for office and it's just like the state level positions, right? Doesn't matter who you are, you walk off the street, you win the job, that's what you get paid. And it seems like in the past there was this presumption that when new people came into the jobs where they paid less than, and I mean significantly less, than what the prior position was that held it. I don't understand why it's like there was means testing going on, like, oh, this person won, or a new person got into the job, we're gonna pay them less. I just don't think that's the way that government ought to work.
Okay.
Because it leads to cronyism. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm saying it leads to cronyism or allegations of it because, well, we don't like the person who won the job, so we're gonna pay them less because they quote, have less experience. Doesn't matter. The voters voted them in. They won the job fair and square. So I don't think we should approach these positions from the perspective of, well, so-and-so just got elected. We ought to look at market-based, you know, that's one indicator that we should use is what the market says these positions get paid.
Well, and I agree with that because we have a commissioner, we don't, if somebody gets elected commissioner, we don't say, oh, well, you're only getting this much because you're new. We don't do that for those positions. So I kind of don't understand why we do it for other positions if we're gonna follow the same.
If I remember
thought
correctly,
process.
I think the thought process was because there was such a discrepancy from where the person was placed initially to where market was, I think the commission was saying, well, let's give it 2 years just because of the financial impact. And I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying. I think that was just the thought process of how to go about it.
No, I agree. That's with regard to the auditors. See, we had this discussion a year ago.
Yeah, because there's
The
a
auditor's
resolution.
position was getting paid less, and for some reason, when the deputy came in and got appointed by the commission, she was paid less than what the previous auditor was. Well, you know, I guess that's just where I philosophically disagree. I mean, it's a governmental position and ought to have one kind of pay rate, just like governor does, just like attorney general, just like all the other positions in state government do the same thing. The legislature doesn't say, well, you're the new guy, so you're gonna get paid less. And I don't know why this commission did that in the past, but I don't know why it did a lot of things, but that's where I stand on it.
So for Register of Deeds, how would you like to proceed?
What was the Register of Deeds making?
That position is at 65%, and it's under market by 14.23%. If you used a similar approach to what you did with the auditor and treasurer, then you would just split it up over 2 years. However, based on Joel's comments, or Commissioner Aaron's, excuse me, if you want to bring them up next year to market, that's up to you, I guess.
Well, if we're gonna do, the auditor on a 2-year period, it seems to me we should be consistent for all of them in that same process.
When do you break that cycle, though?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, we'd break it by doing that, which maybe is a good thing.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you're basing it on, and I'm not advocating for myself.
No,
it's
I
just in
understand.
general, but
It goes up every year,
when
yeah.
you've got a resolution that says auditor treasurer and registered deeds starts at 65,000. It doesn't
Okay.
matter when they start. But the state's attorney and the sheriff, they've got statute amounts that they start at. So they have to start at that, but.
But they
if
don't
you
have to start at that. That's just a statutory minimum.
Well, yeah, I mean the minimum, yeah. But so if you don't have Becky go up to market now, then.
She may never
How
get
do
that.
you, how do you break the cycle for
For anybody else.
the
Yep.
next auditor, the next treasurer? I mean,
Commissioner Aaron's, are you, when I don't want to disagree with you on the salary thing, but would you think that we should just bite the bullet and move them, one fell swoop?
You know, I can't resist, but we're gonna use our Forward Sioux Falls money to invest in our people.
You and my Forward Sioux Falls.
All right, you guys.
That $2,000 a year is really gonna make an impact.
Well, you stepped in that one.
But otherwise, we're gonna have people that get a 14% pay increase?
That's where they're supposed to be. That's where they're supposed to
I
be.
mean, I don't know about that.
Well, here's the problem, and obviously I am not the one to, I am a budget hawk and don't advocate for giving away people's money. The problem that we've been in, I think, and I said this last year too, so I'm on the record, I do not like the idea of this means testing, or every time somebody new comes into office, we drop their pay down, and we use this rationale that somehow, well, they're new. These are government positions, and they ought to have a standard, just like state government actually has a state statute that says that all these statewide elected positions, whether you're a state rep or senator, or you're the secretary of state, or you're the governor, it all says you make a standard amount of money. And that's what keeps everybody fair and honest and accountable. And it doesn't say, well, if a Democrat gets elected, we're gonna pay them half. Well, that's not how government is supposed to work. And we need to do the same thing here at the county level. I would prefer a statutory or an ordinance that would set this. We just, every budget cycle we come in and we're like, oh, that sounds good, let's do it. It's almost willy-nilly is really what it is. We ought to have an ordinance here at the county level, given the fact that we're so big now, that we set these positions at, and then everybody knows what they're gonna be, and then we, as part of that ordinance, you have a cost of living increase or something on top of that. This whole system that we're involved in right now just leads to allegations of cronyism, like, well, we're not gonna pay these people as much. I don't like that. We've got to figure out what that set amount is. I've told you in the past, Julia, obviously, I'm not a fan of the survey, but I am a fan of getting these people up to market. But it's like we're in a market arms race over salaries, isn't it?
Always.
Always.
It's just kind of the game. It's
And-
the nature of the beast.
Yeah, we're in an arms race, but the problem is I don't look at elected officials, people who run for office, the same way as we look at the rest of our workforce. There's kind of, the public has a different standard for elected officials, right? And that's why I kind of like the idea of using this survey, although I'm not a big fan of it, to figure out how much we ought to be paying, but not fully, because these are elected positions where I kind of go back to the model of talking about, governor and secretary of state and all that, where we set that amount in ordinance or statute. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's pretty clear where I'm at. We need to get these people up to a certain position and be done with it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
didn't some of this come about because last year these people were not elected? They were appointed, right? Didn't we have resignations and then we hired things? I think what Commissioner Aaron's is saying is correct. If they're elected, but last year when these salaries were set, it was for some individuals who were appointed. I think there's a big difference. But nonetheless, that's my take on it right now. And I think a 14% pay increase is too much in our budget.
And I guess from my point of view, I'm agreeing with Commissioner Aaron's on this point. And yes, there is a difference, but they are doing the same job, whether they were appointed or elected. And going into things, whoever runs or doesn't run, they need to know what that position's going to be. And, you know, so I'm with Commissioner Aaron's on this one. I think we need to bite the bullet, get everybody where they need to be. And we always look at the cost of living adjustments and step increases for other employees. So I think that's what we need to do for our elected officials as well.
Julia, if we brought all these people up to where they're going to be, what is the total amount on that? Do you have that figure?
I don't. Sherry, would you?
Do you know what the dollar amounts of increases are?
You want just rough math?
Whatever number you want me to put in there.
5,000.
Hold on. Oh, great. Hold on just a second.
And could you spell out which one would get what?
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, all my comments are revolving around this auditor and register of deeds thing, okay? That in the context of them being in this 2-year cycle. Because if we're going to use the market-based approach, that means that if somebody is over market, does that mean we're giving them a pay cut? Well, of course not. And we had that same discussion last year. Are we giving pay cuts when people are over market? So and I understand each commissioner can vote how they want, but I'm just saying, you can't, if you are going to be a huge proponent of the market-based approach, that cuts both ways. And I don't think people are always willing to make it cut both ways. So that's why I'm kind of this fan of setting a standard amount. And yes, in this instance, it means the Register of Deeds and the auditor are going to become quote-unquote winners. They're going to financially benefit from the increase. But that's just because we didn't have the position high enough in the first place of where it was supposed to be. They may become losers 4 years from now if it becomes quote-unquote over market, right? So we got to get these positions up to where they need to be. We should set them in statute and then go.
What is the total?
I know I'm beating the horse.
Okay, so for auditor,
I'd like to know the totals.
Auditor, say 13,000. Sheriff, 5,000. Treasurer, 11,000. Register of Deeds, if brought to market this year, will be 9,000. Did I miss
I
We're
heard
looking at
you
about
on the auditor at
38,000.
13, a Register of Deeds at 9. What were the other ones you had, Julia?
Okay.
It was
Can
a
you read
total
them?
of about 38,000.
so I've got 13,000 for auditor, treasurer 11,000, register of deeds 9,000, and sheriff 5,000. If we,
And then, yeah.
right, so 2.0, if we do we will have a total. Something's wrong.
So
Well, she does that, Julia.
Yep.
Do other counties, if you know,
Mhm.
are other counties here in South Dakota,
Yep.
up and down the I-29 corridor specifically?
Yep.
Minnehaha,
Yep.
Union, Turner.
Yep.
How do they assess what their folks are going to be paid? Do they?
Very similar.
Okay, so they put this list together, they have their auditor come in or their HR person and they say, here's what these 10 counties are making, here's what the market is.
So let's take a step back, that every organization, typically government, has their own comparables. So that's going to vary a little bit. So they gather that data and use a similar approach. So the market-based approach is very commonly utilized in governmental entities for elected officials. So it's funny because we all start emailing each other about the same time, like, hey, what'd you make in 2021? What did you make? What are you looking for an increase? So we're all waiting for each other to make a decision because that's going to impact how we each will move forward next year.
Right.
So this approach is really, really common. There may be a little bit of variation just depending on internal equity based on other department heads within the organization, but to your point, this is really a common approach.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're looking at the wage sheets that you have in there, because we've got the three different scenarios, if we do a 2% raise for everybody with those numbers that we just talked about for the elected officials, this would include the 2% raise for the commissioners because you guys need them also. The total would go up to 11,748,049.48, and that was from 11,597,478.26. That's for 2%. 2.5, it would have been 11,743,764, and this is 11,784,018. 3.25, and again, commissioners at state's attorney, I'm doing their raise based on what the COLA increase that you're giving for everybody else. 11,837,973 compared to 11,835,193.
Yeah, and there was, I'll just tell you, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm not gonna support a increase for commissioners. We just did an opt-out. So I'm not gonna be supportive of, giving ourselves more money when we just took money out of people's pockets to pay for roads and bridges.
But you guys have also cut things such as your meals and travel and everything else. So I mean, and it does cost you guys to come down here, so. But I absolutely understand what you're saying.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you want to bring everyone to market? Is that what I'm hearing? For the initial budget purposes, so Sherry can start with the numbers for you all?
I think that's a good way to start, yes.
Okay. And then in the past, for elected officials that are slightly over market, we've done the cost of living increase that are given to other staff. Is that how you'd like to move forward with this position?
I'm on the fence on that one, if they're over market.
Okay.
Other commissioners, what are your thoughts?
To bring those four positions is a total of $38,000, is that right?
Close to that, yes, yeah.
I might have missed one, but
And then when that's up to adjustment, right, then we figure out whether it's a 2.5 or 3.25, right, for overall.
well, if we're bringing them to market, wouldn't that include the, I mean,
Or
isn't,
bringing them,
Yeah, that's all encompassing, so it would just be this number, bring them to market.
there wouldn't be
period.
an additional
Nope.
COLA
Nope.
increase?
so that's just,
That is
That-
market.
That's market's market,
Yep.
right?
that's
Okay.
market, okay.
Thoughts on how to do the initial budgets for this position? Right now, what's inputted into the budget, just for something to put in there, it's my understanding that it's just the COLA, again, given for what it's worth.
Well, you can on one hand use logically speaking, and I know there's not a lot of logic that goes on with this, frankly, but if they're over market, the axe is coming.
So why wouldn't we set it as a new person coming in or any elected official coming in, you have the base, and then to make it simple, if you're giving the courthouse, I'm gonna use 3.25 because I'm really going for that one, but if you're giving everybody in the courthouse a 3.25, then you just increase the elected officials by that, so they don't have to, sit there and wonder every year, oh God, what are they gonna do? Are you gonna potentially lose money?
Right, because then you're gonna get lopsided the other way at some point.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you just, the new people coming in, get them to market, and then as your elected position continues, whatever the cost of living increase is for the courthouse, that's what the elected position would be. It would be simpler because you are gonna flip-flop every year as you get new people in and out. But then now you're saying, just for instance, with the state's attorney, if you're saying to go by market and you're saying to potentially cut his wage, and I know that we're really not saying that, then he's got how many years of experience? And I know that it's
Does-
not the market thing,
Right.
but to start him at a market and then go up, I think is the best way to do it. This market evaluation every year, I think is unfair.
What if some young kid out of law school, 1 year of experience, ran for state's attorney? Well, the job pays what the job pays.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care whether you're Frank Farrar or Harvey Woolman or Bill Janklow. When they all ran for governor, the pay was what the pay was.
Yep.
It shouldn't matter whether you got 1 year of experience or if you're Johnny Cochran. You know,
Well,
it
when you're
doesn't
coming in
matter.
as an elected position, you're taking the weight of that elected position on your shoulders. They're not saying, "Well, you've only been there. You're not going to be as liable as anybody else."
Yeah, and so that's that is the downfall of the logic of using the market-based approach for these positions, and it's kind of the folly of it. And also, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Sherry, about we're not. I don't like the idea of cutting elected officials' pay in the middle of their term. I mean, geez, we have like constitutional protections for judges that say you can't cut their pay, and it reeks of bad government when you're doing this. That's why I'm not a big fan of the market-based approach. But we need to use some kind of tool to determine what we're going to pay our elected officials. But it's just every year we come in and monkey with this and tinker with it, and it's just like, well, so and so's doing a good job. Let's just give them a raise.
That's why
it doesn't matter whether
had
you're
this
doing a
separate.
good job. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're doing a good job or not in a government position. You're an elected official.
Well, to that very point, Commissioner, so that's why these are handled, the elected officials are handled differently than you do with your general staff, because regardless on your performance of an elected official, and we're super lucky that we all have great elected officials, right? You can be a poor performer and you're gonna just get what market is. So you're not gonna get that step increase because that's not the comp philosophy that's followed. So it's two different approaches, but rightfully so, because these individuals are elected, as opposed to these have to live up to a standard and a performance evaluation. These people, their performance is based on if they're voted in or not.
Right.
So this is good conversation, but there's a reason for the two different philosophies for the two different groups of individuals. But I can appreciate where you're coming from and it makes sense. But there needs to be, to your point, there needs to be some sort of ground base of where to start.
Right.
And if you don't look at your competitors, how are you able to stay competitive within the market and get quality applicants and elected officials?
Well, that's for the people to decide.
That's fair.
Yep. I mean, I'm on board with giving the cost of a living adjustment to those that aren't just, that we're not at market or bringing up to market that we talked about earlier. What, you said you had a sales pitch for us on what percent, so maybe we should have that discussion now.
What percent?
Of the cost of living adjustment. I thought the national increase in cost of living was like 2.96. Am I wrong?
So, good memory. And I actually pulled that data again for this conversation. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna
No.
insert myself in here.
No, because I have no idea.
Sorry
that
about
wasn't
that.
my conversation.
So CPI at the end of March was 2.96. As a general reminder, CPI is the cost of goods services as it pertains to this conversation with wages. So cost of goods and services, just straight out the gate, has increased as of last year at this time by 2.96%. I pulled the data at the end of last month. That number has now increased to over 5%. So just life, these are my words, just life has increased over 5% as it has last year, the cost of goods and services.
No, I think you're right, Julia. I mean, you read the Wall Street Journal or CNBC or whatever. There is inflation in this country. It's real. It's Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, just testified in front of Congress. Inflation is happening. Cost of goods and services is rising. You've got this 29.6, and then a month later, it's 5%. I get that. It's more expensive to live in America today. And the primary driver of that, of course, is there's a lot of money being inserted into the economy by the federal government right now. And that's being spent, and people are raising their prices. And that's why we're in a economic arms war with other counties over what to pay our officials. And I think it's somewhat of an aberration right now, though, because I think once the federal government spending abates, hopefully we'll see inflation go down. But what these folks are saying at the national level is, the chair of the Fed, he testified that he sees it going on for a whole nother year yet. And we're in a highly dynamic economy right now. But going back to our elected officials conversation and cost of living there, I'm curious, what did the state of South Dakota decide for this year?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. And then I'm kind of curious what the counties around us decided, and
For the cost of living,
for the cost of living increases.
they're all, again, having these conversations right now. So
Okay.
nobody has determined that. But typically, when setting the cost of living increases, you use last year's approach, last year's information to set this year's wages.
Yeah, we're not gonna use 5% just because it came out last month, right?
No.
Right.
To your point, that was just conversation. That's
Yeah,
one of the factors to look at when determining a cost of living increase. And I'm happy to talk about the other factors and revisit that if you want to today, or if you have something in mind, and feel free to do that too.
Well, I'm kind of just curious what the other entity, if you're taking a market-based approach and you're looking at what they've done with salaries, I'd be very curious seeing the same chart and graph with what they did for, cost of living. I'm curious what the state of South Dakota did. I'm curious what local school boards have done, because I think the school board budgets are all in by now, aren't they? And so I'm wondering what they did with the teachers and that
They're
as well.
less than 3%.
Yep, to that point, we would compare our comparable entities though.
Yeah, but, I just want to know what
Okay.
the economic landscape looks like, out there. I mean, if there's multiple units of government, follow my logic here, state of South Dakota, local school boards, other counties, and they're all doing, 1.5%. Well, we should take note of that.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean we have to do it.
Yep.
That's why I'm just curious, trying to get as many data points as possible for what local entities have all determined what they thought the cost of living should be.
So I can tell you, I'm sorry.
Well, Sherry had made a comment about being in support of the 3.25. Can you tell us what your logic is on that?
Well, if you look at last year, I think the average was 2.5 for an increase, and then there was a 1% increase for the Lincoln County employees. Also, we have a contract with the FOP, and they're at 3.25. To keep equity in the county, I think it's a good idea to move them at the same rate. That would be my logic for the 3.25.
Okay.
Let me push back on you a little bit.
Go ahead.
They wear bulletproof vests to work.
Yep.
They pull people over in cars that are doing drugs.
No,
They're in
and
a different line of work.
Nope, I absolutely
And I'm not
understand
saying that to disparage the people who
Yep.
don't do that line of work. Don't misunderstand me, because I think I'm just saying what Sheriff Swenson has said in public about, the comparison of the line of work. I think he said that multiple times. It's a
And-
different kind of job.
And when they start out at a higher wage, and I get that, and, so you're starting them out at a higher wage, and I don't want to say anything about sheriffs because I'm not going to get pulled over. I love the sheriff's department. No. But I'm just saying that when their starting wage is more than the office people, which it should be, then the cost of living shouldn't be the factor, because they're already getting the higher wage here. The cost of living is the same whether I'm pushing a broom or I'm protecting the public. It's the,
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the salaries are already in
The cost of
Yeah.
living.
based on the job,
Yeah.
based on their
their
job.
beginning wage is saying that they're, take more risk. And, everybody keeps talking about the teachers, and the teachers start at $41,000 a year. My staff doesn't.
What,
So,
what was the cost? What was the cost difference with a 3 1/4? I mean, how much additional would that cost the county?
from the, 2 or?
Well, just an increase of that amount
So if we look at the wage sheets that I have,
for the people that aren't being brought to market.
well, now you're just asking me to do.
I know. Maybe you don't have to, maybe you don't have that information.
I don't have it. I mean, I could manipulate my spreadsheets to make it happen, but then,
Is that what these are for, Sherry? Would the numbers be on here?
no,
Okay.
your wage breakouts are gonna be on these little ones. That's gonna show you the 3 different wage bases. And of course, that does it, it's not gonna have what we currently discussed with the, well, no, it should. Cause we kinda touched base on it before, so I had those numbers in there with the state's attorney. What did I put on here? Commission, sheriff, and state's attorney, same increase as employees. And then the auditor, treasurer, and registered deed brought up to market. However, the registered deeds was, when we originally discussed it, we had discussed because they divided the treasurer and the auditor, we had 5,000, so.
Right, that's a
Basically,
pretty
that's-
nominal
Yeah,
amount.
yeah, so that's what the difference in these 3 sheets will show you.
Okay.
I think 2.0, at least according to this sheet, if you do 2% COLA for employees outside of the bargaining unit, that's 236,000. 2.5 is 272,000, and 3.25 is 327,000. Am I using the right?
I think here, yep,
That
I
sounds
think
right.
that's what I got, Sherry, right here on this sheet.
yep. Yeah, between the 2.5 and the 3.25, 54,857. And the 3.25,
I mean, I agree. We've already put the 3.25 in for the FOP. Why wouldn't we do it for the other employees if we're saying that that's what the cost of living is and what it needs to be? I don't think we should discriminate between whether you wear a bulletproof vest or not.
that's where your beginning wage is different.
Right, exactly. So I guess I can support that. It is what it is.
And, I mean, as much as I'd like to have you guys make a final decision today, we're not gonna publish this till August 3rd. So
Okay.
you don't have to have a hard, what I'd like to know today for the budgeting is if you're in approval for what Julia had talked about for the auditor, treasurer, registered deeds, and the commission, or the sheriff and state's attorney, how we planned on doing
Right.
those.
Do we have a consensus on how to do that? I think we do, other than Commissioner Gibbon wasn't in favor of making that big of a bump on the register of deeds. Am I wrong?
Would be a bump for all 3 offices.
Right. To bring them to market. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every office was under market, with the exception of the state's attorney, who was 0.99, so basically 1% above market. So all of them were under market. And it cost $38,000 to bring them up to market. That's everybody, across the board. Auditor, registered deeds, sheriff, everybody, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
So that's the numbers that I'll leave in there. I will work up the new sheets again like I have before. But then back to my question, so are we good on wages and everything, right?
Any questions for me? I'm gonna sit down then.
No, as long as you guys are clear on what we're saying.
Yeah, because we're gonna do the auditor, treasurer, and sheriff, what we said for the dollar amounts and the registered deeds. And then the state's attorney at the, whatever you decide for cost of living.
Right, so that's where I wanna, what cost of living do we want?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, do you have to make that decision today? Not necessarily. We're gonna.
Would you like us to make
I
that
would-
decision today?
I'd love to have a decision. We're going to, what we're gonna do is we're going to, and we can give you a week to think about it. We can talk about it again next meeting. And then on August 3rd is when I'm gonna ask for permission to publish the provisional budget. So, as much as I'd like to have it, I don't wanna put anybody on the spot because not that we haven't had time to talk about it, but this is the first time we're talking about wages.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I'm probably in the minority here. I mean, I'm just not a fan of tying cost of living to contractual negotiations with FOP. Because then essentially it sets precedent, basically collective bargaining for non-collective bargaining eligible entities, which is the rest of our workforce. South Dakota's got a very strong position, the state does, with regard to at-will employees inside the government. And I'm just we just raised taxes on people, and there's been a lot of people outside of government who have had a very difficult time through this pandemic, and I don't think one position in this courthouse was lost due to the pandemic. Folks here did okay, and so we've got to be sensitive to the people out there we serve. And yep, we need a good workforce, and by and large we do have a good workforce, but I'd be a little more conservative approach with regard to the cost of living here. So that's where I'm at.
I agree.
And I think Lincoln County overall through the pandemic has not been as bad as some places else in the country. Overall, if we look at the unemployment rate through the pandemic, I think it was lower during the pandemic than it was the year before. So, and they just came out and said that South Dakota had a surplus of how much this morning. So I think South Dakota is a lot more fortunate than a lot of other places. So.
Yeah, and we got that surplus because the federal government gave us a whole bunch of money.
Well, no, it was sales tax.
Yeah, but I read the same
Yeah.
article you're looking at too,
Yep.
and when you dig into the numbers, we balanced our budget in South Dakota using a lot of federal money that otherwise would not have been there.
So, is there any other line items when you look at the summary of fund differences that we want me to work on, get more information on? Are we happy with the numbers? What do we want to do?
Thoughts?
Because I'd like to go back and work through this again and then send out the spreadsheets, and hopefully we're at where we're going to be for the publishing of the provisional.
That floodplain management position, I want to know what it is up front. I mean, because it happens, any particular department head, like I said, can come in and say, oh, well, wait a minute. This is actually, a $70,000, $90,000 a year job that we didn't budget for. So I'd like to see some transparency up front on that, on what actually is it, what are the job duties.
And maybe we can get John to come in at the next meeting.
Well, he either will or he won't. I hope he will, and be
Right.
able to explain that to us and submit a new position request form that's consistent with what the job duties are.
So then on that note then, are we good with the other new position requests to go ahead and include them in the budget and see how the numbers start working, or?
Well, I understood the sheriff's rationale for new deputy. I understand state's turn. I'm basing this not only on today, but previous conversations. I understand the need for a state's attorney. I understand the law enforcement need. There was one position on there for to create a new correctional officer position, I guess in addition above and beyond what we already have. I didn't hear any discussion or talk from the sheriff either in the past or today as to why we're doing that. And I'm not saying we gotta drag Steve back up here to explain it. I'm just saying like there's been, at least as far as I'm concerned in public, and I have not heard, just so the public knows, I haven't had any discussions with anybody about these positions in private either. But I haven't heard one thing, one way or another, about the need for a new correctional officer.
My understanding of it was, and I think he did touch on it, was based on increase in population. He was saying for every 3,000 people, which he said the norm is one officer per 1,000 people, and then he went in to saying he was looking at 3,000 and assuming about half of that growth was going to be south of Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, T, Lennox, that sort of thing, that he would need to add a deputy. That was my take on it, is that he anticipated needing to add a deputy every year.
Yep, for the deputy, but this one is for the correctional officer, and they're doing a lot of the transports for the jail, from what I understand. On here it says COs are utilized for transporting inmates and courtroom security.
I believe one of the things he's looking at for corrections is the sheriff's office uses electronic monitoring on a lot of cases so that they don't go to jail. And I think they've maxed that person out on electronic monitoring because, and this is an old number, but at one point when we had 40 and 50 in jail, we had 134 inmates, which was on electronic monitoring. So that position, I think, can handle 30 or 40 people, roughly. And I think they're reaching their limits on that. And so he's looking at actually expanding the electronic monitoring portion so he can avoid sending people to the Minnehaha County Jail.
Yeah, because if we look at the revenue just from the electronic monitoring fees, they went from 88,000 to 120,000. And
Okay.
I mean, it's not, I don't think super expensive to do it, but that's a lot of fees if he's collecting that much for one person to handle them.
Bill, we don't have work release for Lincoln County prisoners, is that right?
No, since the work release facility in Minnehaha County burned down or was not functioning, which caused us the initial jail problems, everyone has moved to using electronic monitoring.
So even Minnehaha County they don't have a per se work release program if it's not electronic monitoring, that correct?
That's my understanding, is they don't. So it's electronic monitoring or actual jail. And part of what drives our jail is people go out on electronic monitoring. And so we have somebody who monitors that they're sober, they're going to work, they're staying at home, they're doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And when they violate, which we'll see a couple of violations a week, well, then they do the rest of their sentence at the jail. And so, but the whole aim of the program is to keep people working in the community, being responsible and supervised without actually having to use the jail. And so in order for a person to do that, they have to come in and download their electronic monitoring bracelet. They're keeping track of them for maybe a drug patch or for 24/7. And so there's a person down there who supervises all those individuals and generates all of the violation reports, puts the bracelets on, take the bracelets off, has all the contact, make sure that they're appearing for work, they're not going someplace else. And there's just a limit on that individual and how much they can do.
Right.
Fast
Right.
approaching it.
Thank you.
Speaking for Steve, no.
Well, that explains the position.
It explains it.
So do you want me to go ahead and, with the exception, I mean, we can kind of hold off on the floodplain management one, but with the exception of that, are we okay with the other new hires, the requested positions?
I would personally support those hires.
You know, after listening to what Toby said, it sounds pretty fundamental that that's a pretty important addition because of the added growth that we have. When you look at what Carla put out and what Toby put out, those numbers don't lie. and we'll just fall further behind, and if we have all that growth, we're gonna have somebody do that. So I think we move ahead with all the requests.
I'm not saying he doesn't need somebody, but I don't think this is what he needs. I think he needs something, that's maybe got a little higher price tag on it, and I want that to be correct in the budget going forward.
You mean for?
Yeah, and I'm questioning whether that person reports to John, or wears a dual hat, or is in the planning and zoning office, because Toby kind of came in, and I think gave a pretty good synopsis of the position. And I don't know if I'm saying I'm supportive of it right now, but there is a lot going on out there in terms of planning and zoning, and we're fixing to pass a zoning ordinance, or a drainage ordinance in this county. Somebody's got to enforce it. It's just like if you pass speed limits, some deputy's got to go out there and enforce that, right? Well, we don't have drainage cops. We have people in planning and zoning who deal with all that. So I think there's a need, but I don't know if it's supposed to look like how it's been presented here initially.
Well, and I think a lot of their employees that they have up there, they do both departments, GIS and planning and zoning. So it's a benefit because they all work in the same office, so they might as well be multi-task. But yeah, I think that you're probably right, that if they're looking for something more, then we should look for more to start with. So we'll have John come down, or do you want him to go and work with Julia, or?
Well, I mean, it's his department and it's his deal. It's just, we get things in our consent agenda, which is, let's move this person to this and, this job category and give them a step, whatever, to get them to what meets with their job duties. I guess I want to know that up front.
Okay. All right, so anything else that we want to work through?
Madam Chair, I think that's an important position. I do think that they do need some assistance up there. And, how many times have we said our county is rural, meeting metropolitan areas, and there's more and more of this growth and more drainage issues and more planning and zoning. And I guess, I don't know if this is a package deal or what, but if I'm going to support the other three, then I want to support the planning part of it as well. Otherwise, I don't know.
And I'm not saying that I'm not, so I don't know if you're not understanding me. What's been presented, I don't think fits what we need.
So we'll work through that.
So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So is there anything else that you want me to run through?
Not unless you think there's something else that we haven't touched on or that you need some clarification on.
Is John Rombo coming back? Did he delete a bunch of line items today? Or not? I understand where he's coming from. He was pretty clear on a few line items, but kind of iffy on the others, and we just kind of touched on them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there was some fluff. I mean, that $60,000 request, I don't know. I don't know that he needs a new snowplow, and I don't think he needs a $60,000 pickup.
Well, the other item was, do you want to tear down the old jail? That was
Right.
$96,000. Do you want to include that, or?
How is
Yeah.
it? So he said that that's been in the budget like 2 or 3 times, and then it just never happens.
Absolutely, it has been.
That's
Ever
correct.
since I've been on this commission.
So
we've talked about it.
if we're planning on doing it, why are we doing it?
Well, it's an albatross that hangs around her neck, and every year there's other competing priorities.
Decent.
But if we have it budgeted for, isn't it?
Well, because it gets crowded out by other things that aren't budgeted.
I guess that would be a question for our building superintendent.
So do you want me to have him work through his budgets and see where he can tighten it up?
Yeah, what's actually gonna happen and what's needed.
One of the things that occurred to me was you had a $60,000 for a vehicle, and yet on a state bid, we could get a vehicle of what would meet the needs, as four-wheel driver, something for $34,000. I was just wondering, And if the existing snowplow can fit on that, why we have that additional expenditure in there. The other part that is fluid is if what happens on our proposed courtroom expansion. If there's a building to be had and, you know, something like that. But I think you have to leave that in there because that's not going to be imminent right away, because that's, you know, you wouldn't build a building, it's gonna be 2 or 3, 4 years, hence, even if we build one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Commissioner Schmidt. I mean, there may be, just because we may do a lease,
Mhm.
there's no reason why our part of the lease agreement couldn't be where we as the county are providing those services, because they're already built in, economies of scale. You know, we don't need to rely upon the landlord to do services when we may be able to do them ourselves. But I just don't, I'm kind of scratching my head with why we're replacing a pickup truck out at the transfer station. I mean, is that pickup truck currently being used? Is it not? I mean, you know, I don't want to get in the weeds of micromanaging pickup trucks, but geez, a $60,000 line item is screaming out for some attention by this commission, you know?
Well,
I don't, is it really need to be replaced? Can
Well,
we just let it go?
well, the old truck he has, I think, was originally the emergency management. And then that reached a point of no return, so we dumped that out at the transfer station, as we have a lot of other things. And that truck is, I don't know, it's got what, 200 and some thousand miles on, and but I don't think we need a $60,000 rig. Not when your state bid is at 34,000.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking at it from the point of view of if it got pushed out to the transfer station, meaning it's not used anywhere else, and there is no transfer station anymore, do we really need to replace it?
Well, is that his form of transportation that he drives around on?
No, he's got a new pickup.
And
So
did-
the,
No, but-
the buildings has, I
Yeah.
think, I believe if I'm correct, the buildings has 3 vehicles. 3
He's-
pickups.
yeah, he says
2
he
of them
needs-
are old and one of
Commissioner
them's
Aaron's,
brand new.
we find middle ground.
Well, and I'm not saying a pickup is or is not needed, but he needs 2 plow trucks. So, and right now he has 2, and apparently one of them is struggling. So,
Yeah, because it's got, what do you say, 300,000 miles on
yeah,
it?
so I'm not saying he doesn't need another pickup. I just don't think that line item needs to be that high, and I'm not clear on whether, because he
Well,
had
maybe-
comment about certain things could be taken out. So,
Well, and fencing and heated buildings, and don't we have an $8 million heated building just west of town here that could be used? Is that too far away from this courthouse to drive, keep your, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know the answers
Was
to
he,
those
was he
questions.
talking about his snow removal for the courthouse grounds?
I think our
That snow
best bet
throw?
would be just to have John come in person.
Yeah.
Because I can't begin to say what he was talking about.
Sure. That
So,
makes sense.
What I'll do is, we will plan on the 29th talking to John Peters and John Rombo for clarification.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'll ask John to see if he can tighten his numbers or get clarification on any of his numbers. Other than that,
Maybe, Madam Chair, the sheriff can get by with 5 vehicles instead of 6, and one of those, a lot of money could be transferred to John.
well, they're cars, but we could also look at a highway pickup. Do they need a new highway pickup that they're in all the time for, and then they move one over to John that they can use to push snow? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
The only thing, it'd be interesting, if the only thing they're gonna do is push snow with it, that doesn't have to be, it just has to start. And the
So you're saying
hydraulics
you got a
work.
pickup for sale?
Yeah.
All right.
All
so
right.
with those changes and then the new meeting, then we're happy-ish with the rest of the numbers?
We are meeting on July 29th at 8:30.
Right, and then we'll be doing a few things that day. And canvassing an election.
And just in all fairness to John, you know, I do think he, you know, he was either, on the road or at some training or wherever he is today, I get it. He ought to come in here, we can dig into those things a little more. Because I do want to talk to him a little more about how his plans dovetail with the 4-H. And in all fairness to John, he did do a very good job of creating a capital improvement list. I don't know if everybody has seen this, but the guy has put together a very good list of what needs to be done where and in what budget year he foresees it happening. So, and that's, you know, I know we were kind of trying to get through everybody. I would like to kind of go through that with him in public about how his plans dovetail, because I think the 4-H grounds are maybe gonna cost us a little more than what everybody thought it was when we bought that building, so.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out how we were doing that, because he thought that they were gonna be able to build the building next year for the 180. Then we are gonna get the advisors to give us the 180, but then they're gonna do it in phases, so I think that needs to be clarified a little bit more. I don't know if
Well, and
anybody else is.
And I'm not sure, I mean, it was months ago that we said to go ahead with getting numbers for removal of the back guano upstairs. So I don't know if there was some miscommunication there or why that hasn't been done yet, because it sounds like he didn't think he could go forward with that, but we had already directed him to do that. So I don't know why we don't have those numbers yet.
We will find out.
Thank you. That's all I have. Do we have any need for executive session today? Anything else that needs to come before the board? No? Okay.
So our next meeting, Madam Chair, is next Thursday?
Next Thursday at 8:30 in the morning.
29th.
How has
And-
the turnout been for the election? Any preliminary numbers you can
We have
release
about
to the public?
100 absentee applications. Ballots,
Okay,
100 ballots,
all right.
so it's moving right along.
All right, with that, I'd consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
So.
We call the roll? Or is there
Commissioner
something?
Aaron's?
Is there something more?
No.
Okay.
Discussion on a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Aaron's?
All in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
There, all right.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you.